Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the most depraved FNAF fan games the community has ever seen. From disgusting imagery to disturbing stories and concepts that go way further than you'd expect, these games aren't afraid to cross some serious lines. Some of these genuinely made me wonder what I had gotten myself into, so let's dive into them. The atmosphere in Five Nights at Freddy's games is what I personally feel actually makes the games scary. Not really the character designs, of course, not the jump scares, but the way the game's world is built is truly what I think defines a game as scary. There have been plenty of amazing FNAF games in the past with wonderful atmospheres. Think Banshee, FNAF Reanimated, Remnants of Tubbyland, and several more. But today, we're going to be talking about a game I don't hear mentioned all too often around the internet. I personally believe that this very FNAF game we'll be talking about today is hands down the creepiest, most unsettling, and most disgusting FNAF game I have ever played. So strap in and join me today as we dive into the world of Bloody Nights with Froggies. Before we jump into night one, we already have some stuff to talk about. That being the pre-night one cutscene, since this game decides to be a visual novel from time to time, which I do actually like. We play as this fat bastard. The game told us our name, but I can't for the fuck of me actually remember what it is. During this cutscene, we talk to a butler-looking dude named Lorenzi. For a bit of backstory, we want money because we have 2 kids and a wife. Literally couldn't be me, by the way. There's this whole weird opening cutscene that plays when you first open the game, talking about darkness, curiosity, and temptation. Like some weird force that's pulling us into this job. Get better, bro. Once Lorenzi learns about us having kids, we can see him get visibly shocked, and he almost seems like he tries to talk us out of doing this job, which is pretty weird. Since we're on the property of $1 million mansion, there is always worries of thieves and vandals. So he tries to make it seem like that's what we should be scared of, but little do we know that what's in store for us is actually about to be a lot worse. There's so much fucking talking during this section. Obviously, it is some exposition after all. Lorenzi asks us why we chose to take this job. And like, fucking money? You idiot. Of course it's money, bro. Why else do people get jobs? It's not because I want to be a part of your family or whatever you'll try to say our coworkers are. Miss me with that shit, bro. Anyways, Lorenzi says that he has to go, and we learn that our office isn't an office at all. And instead, we're dropped into some busted up shed that probably has demon spiders living inside of it. And that's where we have to stay for 6 hours, so this is about to be awful. Jumping inside of the shed, we learn about the threats we're about to go up against on some crayon and papyrus drawing. But of course, it wouldn't be fun if I just showed you these. Plus, I need some shit to talk about to pad for runtime since I've been told this game isn't that long. Loading into the shed, we get to learn about the tools at our disposal. Hooray! Everybody's favorite part of the videos. To start, we have our camera system. Of course, very simple. It doesn't do anything special and is just a camera system. There are 2 entrances to our shed, the window in front of us and the chimney to the shed because I guess sheds need a chimney for some reason. Each of these entrances has a door. As I'm sure you could have guessed, we can't keep them closed for the entire night, which just makes no sense and adds to my ever-growing list of reasons to pluck all of my fingernails and toenails off. The final tool we should talk about is the lantern on top of our ceiling. This is obviously our only source of light, and it's very limited on oil, so you shouldn't keep it on for very long. This lantern is going to play a huge role for most of the characters in this game, so I'll talk more about it as we learn about the threats this night introduces. We also have one other tool to talk about because I'm a filthy, disgusting liar. This anal tool. Whoops, autocorrect, my bad. This final tool we have to mention is our lighter that Lorenzi gave us. We obviously get the ability to turn the lantern off, so we'll need to use the lighter to be able to turn it back on. However, something really fun about this lighter is the fact that when you click it, it doesn't always ignite right away, and it's actually completely RNG how much you'll have to spam click in order for the lighter to turn on. And even after you manage to get the lighter lit up, the hitbox on this fucking lantern is the most nipple-ripping thing I've ever seen. For some reason, the hitbox for this lantern is significantly smaller than the actual lantern, and if it's not the hitbox that's fucking me up here, then that just means that after you get the lighter lit, there's a cooldown time for you to be able to light the lantern. Out of all things to make frustrating in your game, why the hell did you have to pick the most useful tool to do it to? Probably because God hates me. Anyways, now we can start talking about the 2 threats this night introduces. Not too many threats, which I appreciate. Not too few enemies that it feels boring, but not so many that it feels like a clusterfuck. The last sigh. The first threat I want to talk about is the Dark. I'm pretty sure that's not the actual name of this character, but the game also just doesn't tell you its name. The Dark is a teddy bear that sits under the table in a shed right in front of you. The Dark is very scared of the light, which is weird because I've always heard that opposites attract, so I guess that was just a lie. If your lantern is off, Dark will slowly creep his way out from under your desk to try to give you a little kiss. Thankfully, before he attacks you, he makes a very noticeable sound cue. What the fuck was that noise?
Hirsha. Yep, that was him. Check your office.
Okay, so this means you don't have to constantly be watching for him, which is very nice, especially on later nights when this game gets really ass. Once you see his eyes under the table, you've got about 5 seconds to fumble with your lighter and relight the lantern. Do that in time and the Dark will crawl back into the hellhole from which it came. The second threat introduced on this night is surprisingly the main antagonist of the entire game, which I always think is pretty cool when I see it. This character is obviously Froggy. His goal is to attack you via your window or your chimney. You can track him through the various cameras he goes through, and while most of the cameras don't matter, I do think it's pretty fun to see him through the cameras since it's not just a still image and he does have animations. So you can watch him twerk next to the fountain if you'd really like that. The camera that really matters for Froggy is camera 5, which as you can tell by looking at it is placed right outside of our shed, which is really useful, but let's just put ourselves into the shoes of our character for a second. Could you imagine how terrifying it would be checking the cameras and seeing some fucking monster trying to slowly creep their way into the building that you are in? Think about how actually mortifying that would be. I'd probably kill myself on the spot, on God. Anyways, once Froggy gets to your porch, he will pick one of 2 paths, the window or the chimney. It'll be pretty obvious when he's going for the chimney since he'll start crawling up the building, which is completely terrifying. And then if you don't see him doing that, then you know he's heading to your window. Now, this is where we have to defend ourselves from him, which I can promise you is not the way you're thinking and actually has nothing to do with the doors at all. So, Froggy is blind, like really badly. So if our lantern isn't on when he arrives, he won't be able to see us and will quickly leave. So right away, we already have a really good synergy between the only 2 characters in the night. Dark attacks when the light is off and Froggy pounces if the light is on. Such perfect synergy, it's actually really nice. However, I'm sure a very specific question is crossing your mind right about now. What happens if both Froggy and Dark attack at the same time? Well, thankfully, this developer isn't Satan, and if Froggy and Dark attack at the same time, Dark will wait until Froggy leaves before continuing his attack. This just makes me smile from ear to ear. Overall, this night is a pretty good introduction to the hell we're about to go through. So I guess there's nothing else to do except move on to night 2. Psych fucking moron! We still have a post-night cutscene to talk about. We meet back up with Lorenzi and he says that he thought he heard something moving around in the garden over the night and asks us if we saw anything. We start talking to ourselves about how suspicious everything going on is, and instead of voicing his concerns, we do what every retard in a horror situation does and lie and say we didn't see anything. Lorenzi seems to be able to tell we're lying and tries to soft launch us quitting again. But if we're anything, it's persistent. So we go home to catch some Z's and then return for our second night of work. Moving on to night 2, we have one new threat to talk about. And it's with this threat where it becomes obvious how hard this game is going to become. We just got a tiny little hint this time around. The new character introduced on this night is called Kitty, and as I'm sure you could have probably guessed, this character is in fact a kitty. I know. Oh, that cat is fucking disgusting.
Oh, did you see it?
Yeah, like what the fuck is that, right? Groundbreaking name scheme. Kitty works in the exact same way as Froggy, except with an opposite way of dealing with her. Oh yeah, I'm sure you can already guess what this is about to mean for us. Kitty will wander around the cameras until reaching camera 5. Oh, ew, what the fuck? Why does the cat look like that? She will then switch phases in this camera like Froggy to show her either going for the window or the chimney. The only difference Kitty has from Froggy is that by the time she gets to your window or chimney, your lantern needs to be on. Since cats don't see very well in the light, which is just not true. I know they see better in the dark, but it's not like they're blind during the day, but sure, we'll roll with it, I guess. All right, let's stop stalling and bring up the very glaring problem that Kitty brings up, and that is her synergy with Froggy. Since both Froggy and Kitty will attack together very often, almost every single time they attack, honestly, and that scares me because this is where the game starts to actually get stressful. They will obviously always attack opposite areas, and the way they work makes dealing with them at the same time very stressful. Since for Froggy, by the time he enters, your lantern already has to be off. You can't turn it off in response to him showing up or he will kill you. The same goes for Kitty, but vice versa. By the time Kitty shows up at your shed, your lantern light needs to be on. You cannot turn it on in response to seeing her or she will kill you. So, if they attack at the same time and require two completely different game states, how is this even going to be possible? Well, that's where the doors come into play and stalling characters. So let's start by talking about what exactly happens when you stall a character. Let's say Froggy shows up at your window and you decide to stall him by holding the door closed. He will start by banging on it for a few seconds before leaving. However, instead of resetting like he would if you dealt with him the way you're supposed to, he will instead just move back to camera 5 and will very shortly attack again. So, Froggy and Kitty attack at the same time. The way you have to go about dealing with them is pretty simple, but again, will get your nerves to shoot through the fucking roof. Let's say for this example, Kitty is going through the chimney and Froggy is going through the window. What you should do is turn the lantern on and hold the window door closed. Both Kitty and Froggy will show up at the same time. Kitty will be dealt with since you turned the lantern on, and Froggy will get pissed and move back to camera 5, wherein you can then turn the lantern back off and wait for him to attack again and deal with him as normal. And of course, you could do the exact opposite strategy and stall Kitty instead. Stalling the same character too many times will result in them eventually breaking the door down instead of actually being stalled. So it's probably in your best interest to alternate which character you stall so you don't get yourself rim jobbed on the job. Bars. Overall, this night isn't that hard, as Froggy doesn't activate until like halfway through the night so that you can learn Kitty, and then from there you'll really only have to deal with a double attack twice, maybe 3 times if you're unlucky. And of course, Dark is much more aggressive on this night as well, but this really shouldn't be too bad. That is, not yet. After completing the night, we get another post-night cutscene between our character, whose name has been confirmed to be Thomas, which makes sense because he is the size of a locomotive. Lorenzi asks us how the night went, and this time Thomas isn't a fucking moron and actually tells him what we saw. That being a toy cat crawling through his window, as well as other toys trying to attack him. Lorenzi plays stupid and tries to shift the conversation before eventually just leaving. Thomas is obviously pissed that they didn't tell him this would be happening, yet for some reason he still decides to continue coming back. Like, bro, I get it, money is tight, but I don't know if this is worth it. Oh yeah, and by the way, the actual reason we keep coming back is told to us after each cutscene. Curiosity tempts us into darkness. And you know what they say, curiosity killed the cat type shit. God damn, I'm feeling like a new age Dr. Seuss right now. Somebody stop me, anybody, somebody hold me back. I'm unstoppable. Anyways, let's move on to night 3 before I give all the huzz sodden panties. All right, well, here we are, night 3. And it's on this night where we really start to notice this game's difficulty, because the character this night introduces is truly worse than stubbing your toe in the middle of the night on the coffee table. You know, usually I like to think of myself as a pretty tough guy, generally speaking, but when it comes to getting up in the middle of the night, it's just over for me. I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night once, busted my pinky toe on the island in my kitchen. I was down for 47 minutes. I couldn't even see my toe, but I just knew My toe was bent 90 degrees. Bleeding for sure. I could feel it. It was blood gushing. It's like a person died in my kitchen. That's what it feels like every time. But then I take a good look at my toe in the light and it's like nothing ever happened to it. There's truly nothing in the world that will make you feel like more of a bitch than that exact experience. Anyways, back to talking about the silly bear game with no bear present. The new threat introduced on this night is called Croco, and he resembles that stupid crocodile game that people always add like thumbtacks or razor blades to because they're retarded. Anyways, this guy is hands down the worst character we've seen so far in this game. So I'm betting you can take a guess exactly what it is he does. Let's play a quick game, everybody. Multiple choice time. Multiple choice time. Is Croco A find them on the camera character, B, an eye slot, C, a music box mechanic, or D, a nuisance character? I'll give you a little time to think about this one since it is a pretty tough one. All right, that's enough time. If you answered E, all of the above, then you'd be completely fucking right. God damn it. Because he is literally all four of those things at the same fucking time. Please, for the love of God, just kill me. End it. End it. Fuck. Croco will randomly move around the cameras and can go to any of them at any time. He will never try to attack your shed, so you don't have to worry about that. However, not only is he a character you constantly have to find on the camera, but he also runs on batteries and is a fucking music box. A music box that randomly wanders around the cameras. Is there any way my life could get any worse? Yes. The answer to that question is yes. How so? Great question. Croco does not work the same way a normal music box mechanic works. No, they somehow managed to make it even worse for us. You cannot click and hold the music box button. You have to click to wind up a little bit at a time, except you can't even spam click because after each click, there's a solid 2-second cooldown before you can click it again. And on top of that, his meter also decreases very quickly. So, let's imagine a fun little scenario together, shall we? Let's imagine that both Froggy and Kitty enter camera 5 at the same time. So you know you have to divert all of your attention to them. After stalling one, dealing with the other, and then dealing with the stalled character. And probably have to deal with the headache of the dark at least once throughout this process. After you finally finish dealing with them, Croco will probably have his battery drained past half. And since it takes literally forever to charge him back up because of his dookie booty cooldown time, getting him back up to max before you have another double trouble attack from Froggy and Kitty is going to be incredibly stressful. But I'm a fucking Omega Rizzler Chad, so I wasn't even nervous. Again, this game does a really good job at introducing the threats, since both Froggy and Kitty won't activate on this night until around 2 a.m. So you have enough time to really understand how Croco works, which I really think is wonderful game design. After completing the night, of course, we get another post-night cutscene, this time between Lorenzi and an unnamed guy. If I were to guess, this character is probably the guy that runs the entire place we're guarding. I'm just gonna call him Goof until we get an actual name confirmed. Goof gets pissed at Lorenzi for telling Thomas about the moving toys and how to deal with them, since apparently they can't be letting that get out, which makes perfect sense, honestly. However, if they can't tell the guards about what is going on and they insist on having a security guard, then what is even the point? Since without telling the security guard how not to fucking die, how do they expect to keep a security guard? It's just very weird and something isn't quite adding up here. They mentioned having to kill us, and by kill us, I'm just assuming that means let the toys kill us. So maybe these toys need to eat humans? Something like Graveyard Shift at Freddy's type shit? I don't know at the moment, but I'm hoping that it gets explained soon. Anyways, time to move on to night 4, which surely won't add another character that causes me to rip a baby hippo in half. I hate to break it to you guys, it adds another character that gives me the strength to do what I just mentioned. Kind of. That's a bit of an exaggeration, I can't lie. I actually think the threat introduced on this night is pretty cool, and thank God the devs understand video game balancing and didn't turn this new character into an RNG nightmare, which they could have very easily done. The new threat introduced on this night are the gnomes, which is basically just one character, but there's 3 gnomes fused together, which is completely disgusting, but that's pretty par for the course when it comes to these types of character designs. So wait, fountain camera? What the fuck is that? This game probably has some of the best I've ever seen. They're so gross and creepy. This entire game looks super awesome and I really like it. It kind of reminds me of the art style of Remnants of Tubbyland, which I also really liked the looks of. Anyways, moving on to what the gnomes actually do. And once again, I actually think this mechanic is pretty cool. They combined the mechanics of Grunkfuss from One Night at Flumpty's and Rat and Vinny from Five Nights at Candy's 3, and I think it works really well together. The gnomes will start in the middle fountain camera, and that's where they'll stay. Upon checking that camera, you'll be able to see a patience meter in the top corner, just like Grunkfuck. It'll slowly drain down throughout the night, and once it empties, the gnomes will hot bottom to your office at the speed of sound. Thankfully, you don't even have to constantly watch these guys, since when they start to run, not only do they make a super loud sound cue, but they also completely overlay your cameras, letting you know they're on their way. Once they make it to your office, you need to have your lighter already pulled out and lit. They will spawn in a random place in your office, of which there are 5 possible locations they can be. You need to hold your lighter over their face like Rat and Vinny from Five Nights at Candy's 3, and eventually they'll jump to a new spot in the office where you'll need to do it again. Do this 4 to 5 times and they'll eventually make their way back to the fountain. I just really like mechanics like this. It makes the whole experience feel more immersive and makes it feel like I'm actually defending myself. However, there may be one potential problem you can think of when it comes to this character. That being, what about the other characters? It seems like the full attack of the gnomes takes quite a chunk of time. So how are we not going to get fucking bodied whenever the gnomes attack? Well, I actually have some of the best news in the entire world. This game was made by a very benevolent dev. Whenever the gnomes go into attack mode, every single character pauses what they're doing. That even includes Croco. This is the type of bliss we need to see in fan games more often. You're telling me that me beating this game actually comes down to skill and not just hoping that the game doesn't skull fuck me as hard as it possibly can? I love this. Please do this more. Anyways, of course the other characters' AI values increase during this night too, but as long as you're alternating who you stall between Froggy and Kitty, this night really shouldn't be a big problem. Something I also noticed on this night is why I felt the hitbox to the lantern was so weird. It's because you don't actually have to click the lantern. Just hover the lit lighter over it for a little bit and it will light. This is so much better now that I know this, so that I don't feel like I'm fucking up every single time I go to light it. Anyways, after completing the night, we of course get another post-night cutscene, and this one is really fucking cool and answers one of the questions I had last night. Once again, it takes place between Lorenzi and Goof, who I still don't know the name of. During this conversation, Goof is still super mad at Lorenzi since during the last night he went against Goof's wishes and called us to explain how to survive. During this cutscene, we learn exactly why Goof wants us to die so badly. And it's actually exactly what I expected because I'm a fucking lore god. There is a certain someone who showed up to the garden one day, and Goof isn't even sure it's from this world. Goof made a deal with this creature to feed him humans, and in return, Goof and Lorenzi get to live. So I was so fucking right. I'm just good. I'm just good. It's too easy. I'm better. I'm better! This is Graveyard Shift at Freddy's type plot, and I'm all for it. They hear a loud bang on the door. When Lorenzi asks if it's one of the toys that Goof built, Goof says it can't be since they only activate at midnight and it's currently only 11 p.m. And we know it's not Thomas either, so that means it can only be one other option. Him. My hunger can't wait much longer. Time for you two to become my meal. Absolutely terrifying. Both Goof and Lorenzi presumably get eaten, and Thomas has no idea about it. And since the curiosity beckons darkness, Thomas of course decides to go back to work another night, despite being told not to by Lorenzi. Here we are, and this night is about to get fucking insane. So strap in. Moving on to night 5, there's not a whole lot to talk about since there's nothing new introduced and just serves to be a much harder version of night 4. However, what happens after you complete night 5 is where something interesting happens. We get a pretty cool post-night cutscene. Take a look. Here we are. Your curiosity has gone too far. You're in complete darkness. You want answers? Well,
dead, but I took his form. They brought me food, but I'm still starving. Time to meet. Face to face.
And with that, we jump right into night 6. And let me tell you, this night is fucking crazy. Acting as this game's boss fight night, we only have Froggled to deal with, and he has several different attacks he can do. And 2 of them are some of the most stressful shit I've ever played through, I can't even lie. Let's start with his basic attacks that aren't terrifying. But before I really mention that, I want to talk about this fat bastard's character design. I think this is 100% the most disgusting character design I've ever seen from any FNAF game ever, and I'm not exaggerating. There's always been something about long arms that has made me super uncomfortable, and mixed with how disgusting his face looks, ew, what the fuck, dude, he is so fucking gross. Easily the coolest design I've ever seen by a long shot. Anyways, on to actually talking about his attacks, since that's probably important. Let's start with his easiest attack. Froggled will move to camera 5, just like Kitty and Froggy. Except something about how he moves is that he's about 600 times faster. It's fucking ridiculous. When he gets to camera 5, he too will choose to attack either your chimney or your window, so you have to make sure you are camping camera 5 to be able to tell. Now, upon entering this attack, he can do 2 variations of it. One of the attacks is very easy, and the other is the most stressful part of this entire night by a long shot. Let's get something out of the way. During this night, you're unable to toggle your lantern, and at around 3 a.m. it will go out for the rest of the night. But thankfully, Froggle doesn't give a shit about the lantern being on or not. So, when he gets to the shed, he will do either his hand attack or what I'm going to call his head attack. His hand attack is the easier one, so that's what I'll talk about right now. One more thing this night changes is that you no longer have your lighter. Instead, it's replaced with a crucifix. Why? How? Don't ask. It's just what we're dealing with. Once Froggled starts his hand attack, you will need to pull out the crucifix and hover it over his hand. He will then very quickly move his hand to the other entrance. This can be repeated several times in incredibly quick succession, so you need to be super fast. But don't worry, this is the easiest attack. It's about to get a lot worse. The next easiest attack I'll mention is his clone attack. Once he gets to camera 5, he has the chance to start the clone attack before going to your window or chimney. Fuck, holy fuck, that scared the shit out of me. Fuck me in my rear, dude. If he does, your cameras get forcefully pulled down and he'll turn into the gnome's attack where he'll go Rat and Vinny mode. Same thing with his hands. Take out your crucifix and follow him with it until he leaves. However, once he leaves, he will immediately return to camera 5, meaning he will do his hand or face attack quickly after dealing with the clones. Now we can move on to the 2 other attacks that Froggled can do and why they're so fucking stressful. Let's start with his find him on the camera mechanic, because of course he has one of those, and yes, I want to die. Thank you for asking. On the cameras, you will see the text, "Come find me." When this happens, he will obviously teleport to a random camera and you'll have to very quickly find him. I'm serious, you have little to no time to find this fat ass. And if that wasn't bad enough, once you find him, he'll teleport to another random camera. And he can do this up to 10 fucking times during this attack. It's fucking brutal. But I don't even think that that is the most challenging mechanic this guy has. No, that award goes to his head attack. Once again, he'll make it to camera 5 and decide to attack either your window or your chimney. When he does, if he chooses his face attack, he'll stick his face by the doors and you'll have to quickly close them. He'll bang on it and then at light speed show up at the other entrance. And yes, he will repeat this process several times really fucking quickly. Now, the reason why I feel like this attack is the most stressful is because of exactly how the doors work in this game. You don't just hover over them and click. That would be too easy. Instead, you need to make sure your mouse is actually touching the door, and then you have to click and drag it closed and hold it there. That's not really a big deal, but with how little time you actually have to do this, I can promise you that you will miss the door a few times, which will 100% end your run. Whoa, what the fuck? It's actually so stressful. It always had me sweating bullets, bro. I can't even lie. But if you can manage to keep your cool for long enough to deal with him, we get one more cutscene for beating the night. 6 a.m. Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck out of my dick!
This is the end. You've come a long way. You got what you wanted. I am a creature of darkness, tainted by blood and fear. The sun's rays will burn me to a crisp. Too juicy. Meat. I devoured the souls that came to me. I can still hear them begging for mercy. I feel their blood on my lips. And this only whets my appetite. I'm still hungry. And that means in the deep dark, where you lose yourself, I'll rip out and devour your heart. And this will be my final bite.
That was fucking awesome. Also, if you want to hear something a little less awesome and a little more retarded, directly after this, we get approximately 5 minutes of a Minecraft AMV.
What just happened?
Fuck?
What just happened?
What is this? What the fuck am I looking at? Why? I don't know. This is probably a reference to something. Five Nights at Froggy's Minecraft? I don't know. I don't know what this is, but it's 5 minutes long and it seems like a custom made song for this game. So maybe this is a remake of a Minecraft game? I don't know. You guys can tell me the lore. I have no idea. Now, you'd think after that performance we'd be done, but no. It gets worse, as there is somehow still one more night for us to complete. I have no idea what to expect, because at the time of writing this, I still haven't played it yet. But I am incredibly scared as to what it is I'm about to see, so let's just get right into it. Okay, so sorry to hype you guys up. Sunday is just a custom night, so nothing really interesting here. However, since everybody wanted me to play this game for so long, I actually managed to beat the 520 mode on my 3rd attempt because I'm just fucking Jesus. Literally, I'm God among men. I know. Worship me! Something I wasn't expecting is that there is one more thing to see after you complete the 520 mode, that being a teaser for Bloody Nights with Froggies 2. So get your hype up and then immediately let it fall to the floor because it quickly tells you that this game is never going to come up. And they literally tell you not to get your hopes up. Fantastic. But as far as I'm aware, that's all Bloody Nights with Froggies has to offer. Overall, I think this game is probably one of the most balanced FNAF fan games I have ever played. Everything feels fair while also being able to be stressful the whole time. This game holds your hand by removing as much RNG as possible, but it doesn't hold your hand so much to the point where you can't fail. And I think that's a very impressive feature to have in your games. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think that this game just isn't interesting enough to be worth playing? Let me know in the comments below. In my Knuckles Week at Sonics video, I asked you guys what your favorite thing to do in FNAF post games were, and my favorite answer is this one by Doom Today, who said max modes because they like torturing themselves. And I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, if you think about it, that's what you're doing. That is what you're doing to yourself. You're gonna age by 90 years. It's like you're turning into a fucking welder. Banshee was easily one of, if not the scariest Five Nights at Freddy's game I had ever played. Amazing atmosphere, wonderful sound design, and even pretty damn good game mechanics to go along with it. I've of course covered it on this channel before, and if you haven't already, you should go give that video a watch after this one. The game we'll be covering today reminds me of Banshee in a lot of ways, easily being another one of the most horrifying FNAF experiences I've ever had. However, with all of the good does come some bad, and while I feel there's nothing super bad about the game we're covering today, I do feel like there are a few things that we need to talk about with some very good tips for future game devs. The game game we'll be covering today is Midnight at Star Stage, one of the newest FNAF fan games on the market with a lot of hype behind it. Today, we'll be diving into the game, talking about its story, gameplay mechanics, pros, and cons. So strap in with me as we peek behind the curtains of Midnight at Star Stage. Jumping right into night one, wasting no time, there's something super obvious I want to get out of the way immediately. This game looks and feels exactly like the FNAF fan game Banshee, like I've already mentioned, and I can't lie, I love it. Absolutely, it's amazing. Banshee's atmosphere was one of the best out of any FNAF fan game I've ever played, and I feel like this game really lives up to that exact feeling. This game is horrifying. To our left and right, we have doors. However, both doors are completely different. The door on our left can only be used for as long as we're holding the switch. However, the door on the right is toggleable, which I actually don't think I've ever seen another FNAF game do. Sure, the original FNAF technically has toggleable doors, but they can't be toggled forever due to the fact that you have power. But there's no power in this game, so I just thought that this was interesting. Of course, we have our cameras, however, there is no camera map. Instead, we have to cycle through the cameras using W and S, which I thought was a little bit weird for controls, but that's not super important at all. This night introduces two threats, so let's talk about them and how terrifying they are. Let's start with the main character, Rocky, one of the most aggressive characters in the entire game. His goal is to get to your office, no shit, but his way of doing so is incredibly intense. Just like Foxy, he will sprint Mach 104 directly at your office, and the scariest part, he can attack either side. The way you'll be able to tell which side he's going to attack is based on which cameras he goes through. If he goes to camera 3, that likely means he will attack your left door. If he goes to camera 6, that likely means he will attack your right. Oh fuck! Now, when it gets to your door, all you have to do is close it. However, like I said, he is incredibly fast. And when he runs to your door, well, yes, he does make a noticeable sound cue. Just take a look at this clip and see how fast he really is. I don't know, dude, there's no fucking sound cue. What? Yeah, he is very fast. And this game is about to be both really fucking hard and really fucking scary at the same time. Strap in, guys, it's about to get crazy. Anyways, moving on to the next threat we have to talk about, that being Rash the Cat. Rash the Cat really goes to show how difficult this game is going to be, and that mainly comes in the form of how much synergy he has with Rocky. Just like Rocky, Rash too can attack both of your doors. However, he is completely silent. Very reminiscent of Springtrap from Banshee, he will creep up silently to either of your doors and stare at you. All you have to do to make him go away is stare back. Oh my fuck! It's a costume! Why is it moving? We're about to be in for an absolutely wild ride, guys. These characters are terrifying, some of the scariest I've ever seen, right up there alongside Banshee. I think it's pretty clear this game drew a lot of inspiration from Banshee, and I think that's great. They nailed the atmosphere, they nailed the character designs, and they even nailed the pressure that Banshee brought, and we're only in night one. The synergy Rash has with Rocky is mainly with your right door. Since it's toggleable, the thing you'd want to do is keep it closed, since the reaction time you need for Rocky is scary fast. However, since Rash is so quiet and makes no sound cues, it leads to you needing to keep that door open so you can constantly check for him. It's a small detail, but definitely one worth talking about. This game doesn't have a task-based completion system like Banshee, instead having the usual time-based one, which I want to be clear I don't think is an issue. Sure, I love it when games try something new, but there's nothing wrong with sticking to the usual. I'm super excited to see what the rest of this game has to offer, so without further ado, let's move on to night 2. Psych! I lied. First, we have to talk about night 1's post-night minigame, and why I don't give a fuck about it. In it, we have to collect a bunch of bullshit scattered around the building. Boring! I'd rather jump into a glitching wall and get teleported next to a ninja by a campfire. Thank you very much. After teleporting, we touch the fire and the minigame abruptly ends. Now we can move on to night 2. Night 2 really goes to show how this game is eventually going to have to be played out, as it adds one of the most annoying threats in this entire game. That being Bowie. Bowie acts as this game's eye slut. That's right, I'm coining a new FNAF term, and I expect it to be used very frequently by everyone in the fandom from now on. Eye slut refers to a character archetype that revolves around said character needing to be stared at, and that's the only fucking mechanic. And this game's eye slut is Bowie. Bowie will randomly move around cameras 3, 6, and 9. Some would even say, damn, she fine. If you ever don't glance at Bowie for long enough, he'll appear at your door where no matter what you do, even if you close it, he'll still close the gap between his willy and your butt and start clapping your shit like a crowd after a good performance wanting an encore. The real issue with Bowie isn't even Bowie himself. It's more so due to the fact that it makes Rocky so much scarier. Whereas before, all you really needed to do was watch him so you could tell which side he was going to attack, while Bowie is active, you should be staring at him the entire time. So this leads to you needing to be able to react to Rocky every single time. So if your reflexes are shit, you will be shit at this night and the entire game as a whole. But overall, this night isn't too bad. Now we can move on to the post-night 2 minigame, which is much the same as the first. This time around, we actually play as a different night guard, which is interesting. And this time we're tasked with taking some animatronics to the stage. Boring! I'd rather jump into a glitching wall and get teleported next to a ninja by a campfire. Thank you very much. After teleporting, we touch the fire and the minigame abruptly ends. And now we can move on to night 3. Actually, I lied a bit. I just thought it'd be kind of funny to repeat the ending of the last section since you do the same thing. What I want to talk about is that for some reason during this minigame, the monkey we first see is in the 2D style like everything else. But if you do some exploring, you'll find the other characters, except they'll be in the normal 3D rendered states, which is honestly just super uncanny and creepy. It's cool, it's random, it's unimportant, but I wanted to mention it. Are you guys ready for night 3? I really don't think you are. Like, really ask yourself the question, am I ready to learn about the third night of this game? Dexter's asking me to think about it, so that clearly means I'm about to learn about the most soul-degrading thing of all time. Did you ask yourself the question? Great, let's move on to night 3. Night 3 introduces a certain type of mechanic, a very common mechanic in FNAF games. Almost every single FNAF game has at least one of these, actually. And fun fact, this very mechanic was what spawned the most recent Dexter White song, Nintendo No. Go listen to it. It's on all streaming services, by the way. Is that enough of a hint as to what type of mechanic is slid into my butthole on this night? Well, if it's not, let me help you a bit. This night introduces a fucking monkey. I don't even want to do it the due diligence of saying its stupid fucking name. It's a piece of shit. In fact, it's the same monkey we put on stage in the last minigame. Monkey Dick has his own stage, and thankfully, he's nothing like Bowie, who requires me to stare at him all night. However, he does something arguably worse. Occasionally, at random, throughout the night, he will slam his cymbals together. And now, I want you to take a solid guess as to what it is we have to do after hearing these cymbals. Really think about it. What could this so far amazing game do to just really shoot itself in the foot like a soldier trying to get an honorable discharge? I think I've given you enough time to think about it. After Monkey Fuck smashes his cymbals together, he will teleport to a random fucking camera. God damn it, fuck me right in my rear. This night also introduces the ability to flash your cameras. So all you have to do is find the rape ass monkey and flash him to make him go back to his stage. I quite literally have no idea what makes these games unable to come up with something unique. Don't get me wrong, I think this game is fucking amazing, and this find them on the camera mechanic is nowhere near as terribly integrated as some of the other FNAF games I've played, but please, guys, stop doing this. My poor little heart just can't take it anymore. But aside from that, that's all this night adds. Now we can move on to the post-night minigame. In it, we're driving a car right after a beer. We can choose to hit some deer on the road, but the game would really prefer we didn't. Fuck the actual point of the minigame. We all know that there will be a glitch somewhere. And sure enough, at a certain distance, you will see a glitch. Bam down and you'll be teleported to the fire with the ninja, touch the fire and the minigame comes to a close. I have no idea what this fire could be symbolizing. And yes, by the way, I know that this is most likely not a ninja, but I'm noticing while writing this that in my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I actually never found the glitch in the first minigame. So now I'm dreading having to replay the whole game later. But that's Future Me's problem. And I don't give two fucks about Future Me. For now, let's move on to night 4. Damn, we're already on to night 4, huh? Shit, we're just busting through this game all willy-nilly style. Well, there's a new threat introduced on this night, and it's honestly like not even a problem at all. Something I'm noticing about this game is that while yes, it's very scary and that's awesome, the game is also like piss easy, which don't get me wrong, I don't want it to be the hardest thing on earth, but it's like, you know, a little bit too easy. Anyways, moving on to the threat this night introduces, Floppy. Yes, I'm serious. Get it out of your system. I know it's a completely ridiculous name, but that's his name and we love him just the way he is. And the way he is basically just a fucking statue. Floppy sits directly outside of your right door and his mechanic is cool at a glance. Floppy is a weeping angel and will only move when your door is closed and you can't see him. So he directly synergizes with both Rocky and Rash. However, if you've seen my playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, then you'd know that the need to have this door closed at all times isn't really present, as you need the door open at all times to see if Rash is there. So keeping it closed at all times is actually just a pretty bad idea. And it's not even like Floppy moves at an insanely fast rate, because he really doesn't. So for most of the game, it'll be like he's just a fucking decoration. It looks scary and that's cool, but generally speaking, he doesn't really add anything to the gameplay loop, which I do think is very disappointing. I've thought for a bit on how you can make him more interesting without changing his mechanic at all, and I think I have two decent ideas. The first being the one I would personally go with. Really make him a weeping angel and force you to look at him, not just have the door open. This would make him much more threatening, albeit the most annoying thing on earth. The only other way you could make Floppy more threatening is somehow designing a way to make closing his door more needed. Because quite literally, the only time you ever need to close the door is the 2 seconds it takes to make Rocky go away. And that's even if he attacks that side in the first place, which of course isn't always guaranteed. But realistically, the best way to solve this problem is to not even have the problem in the first place and just make Floppy do something else. There's plenty of mechanic ideas that devs could take from the other brilliant fan games that exist. Here's a quick tip for FNAF devs. If a character you add doesn't feel like a new threat you have to actively think about, either don't add that character or find a new mechanic for them. Anyways, after completing the night, we of course get a post-night minigame. In it, we play as a sad fat kid. I actually can't confirm if this kid is sad, but I know that if I was fat, I would probably be sad. So I'm just assuming this kid is the same way. In this minigame, all we have to do is walk from one side of town to the other while avoiding cars on the road that are, for some reason, not stopping for the literal roadblock of a child directly in front of them. At 2 points during this minigame, you can see what appear to be a pair of eyes watching us. But I have no idea what this is actually supposed to mean, and I also don't know what the story of this game could be literally at all. Now, for the glitch, which this time around is completely unobvious. If you get all the way to the end of the map, what you're supposed to do is just touch the edge and you'll be booted to the menu. This is what I did on my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. There's blood leaking out of me, knowing that I'll have to go back and fix this, but whatever. If instead of touching the edge, you instead go all the fucking way back, really getting Tubby his exercise, and touch the edge next to where you started, which by the way shows no indication of being glitched, so this is just bullshit, then you will be teleported to the fire with the ninja, touch the fire, and we can move on to night 5. Night 5 introduces one new threat, and I'm honestly surprised that it does. Very uncommonly do I find FNAF games that consistently add a new threat with every night, and I honestly really appreciate this game for doing so, albeit both this threat and last night's threat are pretty lackluster. But before we talk about the threat this night introduces, we need to talk about this night's phone call. Because even though it's by far the shortest one, it easily is the most interesting we've heard so far. The phone guy just tells us that tonight will be our last shift, because the floppy suit almost killed the employee who was inside of it. So that's just based in Riz, I can't even lie. Anyways, on to talking about the threat that this night introduces. That being the fucking mouse that the game didn't tell me the name of, so that's just awesome. Mickey Mouse fuck-ass boy adds a mechanic that honestly might as well not even exist. I struggle to figure out whether I think the mouse's mechanic or Floppy's mechanic is more worthless to the gameplay loop. Dicky Mouse will randomly appear on whichever camera you're looking at. When he does, you won't be able to switch between cameras. To make him go away, all you have to do is flash the camera. So just press space and he goes away. That's literally it. He can only appear on the camera you're looking at. So it's not like you're ever going to miss him either. And he's also very forgiving with the amount of time you have to flash him. So really, if you die to this guy, you're just retarded or dead at your keyboard. I really wish I had more to talk about with these mechanics. Sure, I could sit here and complain and bitch and whine and say the mechanics make me want to do something to my penis that will damage it beyond recognition. But I mean, really, just look at the gameplay between night 3 and 5. Tell me if you see much of a difference. Spoiler alert, you won't. In fact, let's actually play a game real quick. Right here, I'm showing you 2 clips from my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. One of them is footage from night 3, and the other is footage of night 5. I want you to take a guess at which video is which. I'll give you a bit. Did you make your guess? Well, fuck you, because both of these clips are night 5. That's how similar they are. So while yes, it's cool that this game is adding more animatronics, I just really wish they'd do something that mattered to the gameplay loop, but they just don't. Anyways, after completing night 5, we don't get a minigame in the same way we usually do. Instead, we get a cutscene. A child is talking to his father. At some point, the child leaves and the father spots one of the mascots and goes to talk to it. Upon interacting with the fucking mouse, we get jump scared and he asks the dad if he needs anything, and the dad says no. So like, why the fuck did you even go up and talk to him in the first place? Either way, with that, night 5 comes to an end. Night 6 is not what I expected at all. Discover it for yourself. Now you see, I don't like that you're saying it like that. What do you mean discover it for myself? Easily being the most interesting night throughout the game, albeit still incredibly easy. Night 6 is a boss fight night with this fucking thing. What the fuck is that? Whoa! What the fuck? The fuck was that? Tell me that wasn't the coolest and most terrifying thing you've ever seen in your life. So yeah, this is the final boss of the game. Do I have a reason as to why it looks like this or what lore significance it has? Literally fucking no. Not at all. But who cares, because he looks fucking sick. The way he works is incredibly easy. He can attack both doors. He works pretty much entirely off sound cues. He will be moaning throughout the entire night, which I will add is very gross, but I guess that's just what he's into, so I'm not gonna kink shame the poor guy. Whenever he moans, that tells you that he's moved. If you ever see him at your left door, all you have to do is hold the door closed. He will begin banging on it, so just make sure you hold it closed until he stops. If it wasn't obvious, all of the other characters aren't activated on this night, so you don't really have to worry. Now, when he attacks your right door, you'll have to do something just a little bit different. You still have to close the door, but for some reason, he really doesn't like it when your computer is on while he's on the right side. Very weird, but we'll listen. So when you see him on the right side, all we have to do is close the door and then turn our computer off and he'll go away. Now, we have to talk about how you actually beat this night, since it's not just as easy as holding off until 6 a.m. like the rest of the nights have been. This is a boss fight night, and this time you're actually fighting a boss. When he moans, it's much more likely for him to just switch cameras than it is for him to appear at your door. He is a find them on the camera character. However, he's the only character in the night, so it's not a big deal. You will have to constantly track him on the cameras and spam your camera flash on him to deal damage. Flashing makes your system crash, so get ready to deal with rebooting your cameras constantly. Deal enough damage on the cameras and this final night will come to a close. However, depending on if you were able to collect all of the fires next to the ninjas in the minigame will determine which ending you get after completing this night. After winning, the creature will force his way into your office like Graveyard Shift at Freddy's and kill you, wherein you get the bad ending. But who cares about the bad ending? The interesting ending comes in the form of collecting all of the fires from the minigames. Now, I'm not kidding about this. I promise. After you beat the night, the creature still kills you. However, the fire slowly rises from the bottom of the screen, and you're spit into a fucking Undertale boss fight with the creature. What the fuck am I playing right now? I'm dead serious. This is not edited. This actually happens in the game. You have to dodge a plethora of attacks, and every once in a while, you'll get the chance to attack. Attack 4 times and it'll fucking die, rewarding us with the good ending, which by the way, is no different from the bad ending. There's no extra story revealed or a cutscene. It's just a boss fight and then an end screen. There's only one other thing I wanted to talk about, and that's a weird minigame you can find hidden in the extras menu. In it, you play as this weird white statue thing. The only thing you can do is find a newspaper clipping on the floor talking about some missing children. That's literally it. I have no idea why this is here. I have no idea what missing children had to do with this game. I failed to pick up on pretty much any lore this game has thrown out, if there was any at all. But for all of you little theorists, have fun with that information. But with that, that's all Midnight at Star Stage has to offer. Overall, I think this game was terrifying. However, I feel like this game was heavily inspired by Banshee. And it was. It almost feels like the dev wanted to make Banshee, but didn't actually fully think about the mechanics of how the game would work. Don't get me wrong, this game looks amazing and it plays well, but the synergies with characters really just aren't there. And I have no idea what the fuck the Undertale boss fight was about, but it was pretty cool. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think Midnight at Star Stage is actually just like Banshee and is almost more perfect in some ways? Let me know in the comments below. In my 5 Nights at Marcus video, I asked you guys what you think is the worst FNAF series ever made. And my favorite answer was everybody who said Jolly, because I think it's pretty obvious that I heavily agree with that statement.
The FNAF Fanverse Initiative, an idea Scott Cawthon had that was so good. The ability to bring fan game devs of your games into a closer community and allow them to sell merchandise based off of your branding is an amazingly generous and incredible opportunity. Having amazing games come out of it, such as Joy of Creation, 5 Nights at Candy's, and Pop Goes, each of these creators are very passionate in what they do, and it shows. Another game to come out of the fanverse is One Night at Flumpty's 3, the third game in an incredibly designed series. But as something that has become all too familiar with FNAF fan games, as previously seen in games like Graveyard Shift at Freddy's and Dormitibus, the creators' morals and ethics of said games can be called into question. And sadly, the creator of this game, Jonachrome, had his turn on the chopping block that is the internet. Today, I'll be diving into Jonachrome's fantastic FNAF fan game series, all the goods, all the bads, and the disturbing accusations that had the light shined on them for all the public to see. Come with me as we explore the masterpiece of a FNAF game created by a deviant. One Night at Flumpty's 1 is what you'd expect from an old FNAF fan game. It's pretty much just a recreation of FNAF 1, but this game did it differently. Something I think a lot of people could agree with me on is that One Night at Flumpty's was ahead of its time. No other FNAF fan game was as well put together as Flumpty's was. You could argue 5 Nights at Candy's was, but I'm not talking about Candy's right now, am I? As the title suggests, this game only features one night, but don't let that make you think it'll be a cakewalk. This one night is up there in difficulty with nights 5 and 6s from the normal FNAF games, and the difficulty increases by the hour instead of the day. Before I dive into gameplay, however, I want to talk about how amazing this game really looks. There's a lot to be said about Jonachrome, and I'll be diving more into his character at the end of the video, but Jonachrome is an artist, and a damn good one at that. Every single location in this game has so much character put into it, especially the office. Sure, there's a lot of dead things, but ignore what it is for a second and just admire how well done the 2D art in this game really is. Not many FNAF games go for a 2D approach, and I really wish more did because I think it looks amazing. Look at Playtime with Percy for another example. That game is 2D and it looks incredible. Then look at another completely flawless and probably the best FNAF game ever designed with zero competition, FNAF Shitpost, another game with 2D art that is fantastic, and I definitely have no bias over that game at all. This game did something no other was doing at the time, and it has aged like a fine wine. But now, let's jump butthole first into the gameplay. As mentioned already, this game only has one night, but dear God, it's a long one. Each hour of this night is a minute and a half, making the full night 9 minutes long, which is a crazy amount of time for a FNAF game where you need to have good nerve control. Just like FNAF 1, you have a power system. However, it's only affected by your doors, so feel free to camp the cameras as much as you'd like without the worry of draining your power, which I promise you'll be doing often, as this game is going to rail you in the asshole with encounters, and you'll have to stay on top of each character's location. Speaking of the characters, who are they? Nice segue, Dxtr. Thanks, Dxtr. The first guy we'll talk about is obviously Flumpty, the main attraction. Flumpty acts both as the Freddy of this game and the phone guy. At the beginning of the night, he tells you that his name is Flumpty and that he is immune to the plot and can transcend space and time. He goes on to tell you that he kidnapped you and brought you here to be friends, and that he's coming after you. And coming after you, he is. Holy shit. This guy moves at the speed of sound. Flumpty moves randomly across cameras with no pattern, and he can teleport wherever and whenever he likes. Which means, if you're unlucky like me, he can get to your office in about 15 fucking seconds after the night starts. That's awesome. I'm in for a shitty time, aren't I? I'm covering 3 games in this video? Can I get that confirmed? Can I? Hey, can you confirm that? Uh-huh. Yeah? Yeah, alright, fuck me. 3 games in the first 15 seconds already has me stressing. I love this. If you're unable to see Flumpty on any of the cameras, that means one of 2 things. Either 1, he's on the broken camera, which I'll talk about later, or 2, he's at your left door. If he's at your left door, just close it and bada bing bada boom, he can't get in. But something you'll immediately notice is that, unlike FNAF 1, there's no windows, so you won't be able to tell when he's left by just sitting in your office. So you'll have to constantly be checking the cameras to see where he is. And when he moves as fast as he does, it can get overwhelming quickly. Let's talk about our next freak, birthday boy Blam, or just Blam as I'll be calling him. Blam works very similarly to Flumpty, except he attacks the right door, and he can't teleport like a dick. He follows a set path to your right door. Just close it, watch the cameras to see when he leaves. I just queefed. That's all you have to do about him. Oh, and in case you were curious, he's also Usain fucking Bolt and moves around the building at Mach 30, so that's just awesome. The Beaver is up next on the chopping block, and yes, his name is just the Beaver. I guess Jonachrome gave up on names here, but that's okay. What does he do? The Beaver acts as this game's Foxy, which it honestly didn't even need because of how often you're checking the cameras, but who really cares? The Beaver is sitting on the toilet taking a big fat patty-whacker double-decker dump and reading a newspaper with several tasteful stories in it. Next to the toilet, you'll see a roll of toilet paper. Throughout the night, the more you fail to watch the Beaver, the smaller the roll of toilet paper will get. When he runs out of toilet paper, the Beaver will sprint at your right door. Also, quick side note, the Beaver has knife feet. I don't know why, it's just something interesting to note. Who's up next, huh? Who do I have in my sights? Boom! Grunkfuck, Grunkfuss the Clown. Arguably one of the most popular characters to come out of this series. Grunkfuss is the first character I've mentioned who doesn't start at the beginning of the night. Instead, he starts at 4 a.m. I love this clown's mechanic. It's incredibly cool. I should mention that this game deliberately doesn't tell you how to play, and it doesn't describe how any of the characters work, leaving you to figure it out yourself. I love this idea, and it can lead to you feeling pretty smart when you find a small detail that can help you figure out how a character works, and Grunkfuss is a perfect example. Grunkfuss doesn't show up on your cameras. Instead, he is only ever visible inside of your office. As the night goes on, he will become more and more visible via a hole in the wall of your office. Well, that doesn't sound fair, I hear you say, and I usually agree. Until you put your thinking cap on and realize there's a hint in this game that perfectly explains how Grunkfuss works. On camera 5, there's a hole in the ground with 30 eyes inside. That number is very important. Every time you lift your camera up, you'll notice that one of the 30 eyes have disappeared, and every time you pull your camera down, Grunkfuss becomes more visible. If his eyes reach 0, when you pull the camera down, Grunkfuss will grunk fuck your shit up. I think this is such a cool little hint this game gives you to explain how he works. You could easily play through the whole game and never piece this together. This is something I really love when games do, and I'd really like to see more of it. But we've still got more to talk about, buddy. Let's move on to the Red Man. Red Man becomes active on hour 3 and starts on camera 3. You'll notice throughout the game up until this point that camera 3 has never been visible. That's because Red Man isn't technically visible on the cameras. Whichever camera he's on will be blacked out, which lets you know where he is. Red Man slowly moves from camera 3 to your left door where you'll be able to see him and close it. Just like the other door characters, you'll have to watch the camera for when he leaves. This brings me back to a point I made when talking about Flumpty. If Flumpty or Blam are on the same camera as Red Man, they too won't be visible, meaning there's a possibility you won't be able to find them, and a possibility that you'll shit your pants as I did when I couldn't find Flumpty because he was camping out with Red Man. So that was fun. The final character I have to briefly mention is Golden Flumpty, and I say briefly because there's not much to talk about. Sometimes you'll see him in your office, and when you do, you have to quickly pull up the cameras. If you don't, a dead sandwich is what you'll be turned into. In terms of characters, that's all One Night at Flumpty's has to offer. This game can be brutally hard. Obviously, like any FNAF game with enough practice, you'll be able to beat this game like clockwork. But hot damn, your first run through might very well be pretty difficult, especially considering you're not taught how to do a goddamn thing. But that's the first game. I'd personally say that it's fantastic. But what if I told you the second game is even better? Let's waste no time and jump into it. One Night at Flumpty's 2 is visually just as great as the first. Each setting looks fantastic. The game is significantly harder than the first, mainly because there's much more to focus on. To start, this game's phone call actually explains the rules, like a little bit. You're gonna have to do a lot of trial and error, but hey, it's still more than the first game gave us. The phone call this time around is a short song, which, that's just lovely, isn't it? The song explains if our lights are off, we're safe, and if they're not, we're about to get our cheeks spread apart so hard they rip off. So, why is the light so important? Well, let's do what we do best and go over each threat one by one. Let's start with Flumpty. As he was in the last game, he's pretty basic in terms of mechanics. Like in the first game, he teleports around wherever and whenever he pleases, so don't think for a goddamn second you're safe, because you're not. He's hungry for ass, and you got a whole lot of it. He a hungry bitch. If at any point you can't find him on the cameras, he will be right outside of your door in the hallway, and in a few seconds, will pop his head in and give you a blumpkin. Characters looking into your office actually brings up one of this game's central mechanics, which I think is really cool. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see an exposure meter. If at any point that meter fills all the way up, it's time for Flumpty and his friends to eat toast off your ass without the toast. When Flumpty peeks his head in, he will have his hands over his eyes to play a quick game of peekaboo with you. Be lucky that he's forgiving like this, because no other character from this point forward will be. While he has his eyes covered, your exposure meter will not increase. This gives you about half a second to turn the lights to your room off. After a few seconds, he will leave and you can turn your lights back on. But before we continue, let's go over what else happens when you turn your lights off. Let me quickly go over the camera and something I noticed about these games that I really like. Notice how in the first game, the camera didn't waste any power. Well, in this game it does, but it does it in a much more engaging way than it does in other FNAF games. Rather than just lowering an arbitrary number, you'll notice on the bottom of your screen you also have a laptop power meter, your laptop being your cameras. While your laptop is up, that meter will decrease, and when you put the laptop back down, the meter will slowly charge and increase again. I love this mechanic. It's still consequential to sit on your cameras, but it still keeps you in control. These games have such good balancing. I struggle to find other FNAF games to match in this department. If your laptop meter is to go completely empty, it will forcibly close and you'll have to wait for it to charge all the way back up before opening it. And when you do, you'll have to wait for the laptop to reboot. This may not seem like a very big deal, but when watching the cameras is as important as it is in this game, having to wait those 10 seconds can feel like an eternity. But back to turning the lights off. When the lights are turned off, you cannot access your cameras, and your laptop will not charge. This is one of those multiple ways this game keeps you from sitting alone in the dark. Something I think all of you chronic gooners should take note of. Blam Birthday Bitch Boy is next. He, like in the last game, works almost the same as Flumpty, moves around a set path, goes to your office, takes a sneak peek at your bits. However, this motherfucker don't play no games. No peekaboo for this guy. Once he's looking, your exposure meter starts to climb. This leads to you needing to watch the cameras and track his location, because even multiple small slivers over how godforsakingly long this night is will start to add up and lead to your asshole looking like a cave. Blam increases your meter faster than Flumpty does. Even though Flumpty is literally a chaos god of death, he increases your meter slower than any other character in this game. Something I think says a lot about his character. I'd say he's just a little harmless guy, but he also has canonically killed 1 billion birds with one stone. No, I'm not joking. Grunk Fuckass the Clown is also pretty similar to how he was in the first game. Psych! I fucking lied, bitch! Go look in the mirror at how fucking stupid your face is. You actually thought for a second I wasn't gonna lie straight to your stupid, dumb, ugly face, but I did. Anyways, Funko Pop the Clown can be seen crouched on camera too. Around 2 a.m. he will become active, with a hole appearing on your wall and a patience number appearing on camera too, and quickly decreasing. Once Grunkle Stan the Clown's patience wears thin, he'll pop his head through the hole in your wall and dramatically begin increasing your exposure meter. I'm talking Tyson Gay levels of quickness, and I say Tyson Gay instead of Usain Bolt because there's one character who increases it even faster. Eyesore is technically another character returning from the first. Remember the eyes that appeared in the hole on the floor that showed how many times you could flick up the camera before Fuckhead the Clown would ream you from behind? Yeah, that's him. That's Eyesore. Eyesore will start on camera 1, but won't be active until 4 a.m. Keep in mind, each hour in this game is long as fuck. He'll make his way to your office and peer in. When I tell you, the speed at which this bastard eviscerates your exposure meter is faster than the speed at which I bolt to the toilet after Indian food. I'm not lying. I suppose it makes sense given how many eyes he has, but like, damn, don't let this guy eye bang you for too long, no matter how sexually attracted you are to it. The last returning character we have to bring up is Redman. But Dxtr, what about the beaver? He fucking died. He fell into the toilet and fucking died. Are you happy? I didn't want to have to tell you, but you pulled my leg. Dick? Anyways, Redman. At random points during the night, warning pop-ups will appear on your laptop. If you're not in your laptop, it will be signified next to your camera button with a warning sign like the music box from FNAF 2. When you see this warning message, it will be accompanied with a loading bar. If the loading bar fully increases, you'll be as dead as disco. All you have to do is click cancel. If you lose to Redman in this game, I have no sympathy for you. You have to try and lose to this guy. What about new characters? Well, there's only one, but he's pretty sick. The Owl. The Owl will appear on your cameras taking a fat-ass nap. Throughout the night, he will open his eyes and eventually leave the urinal he's perched on. When he does, you'll have to quickly check your vent cameras to see which vent he's about to assault you through. Once you know, you'll have to close the vent in your office in accordance with which side the Owl is attacking you from. If you don't, you guessed it, ask buffet and you're the main course. The vents don't waste any power, but only one of them can be closed at a time. So there's that. Additionally, you can close the vents even if your lights are off, which is incredibly generous and really just adds to the flow and pattern this game has. The final character I want to talk about is Golden Flumpty. So I guess I technically lied when I said Redman was the last recurring character, but fuck you. He works the same way as he did in the first game. Sometimes you'll see him in your office, either quickly turn the lights off or pull up your camera and he'll leave. Whoopity-doo, lore or something, I don't really know. That's all One Night at Flumpty's 2 has going for it. Well, it has a difficulty mode called Hard Boiled, which drastically increases the difficulty of the night, but it doesn't change any fundamental game mechanics, so I don't think it's worth diving into. One Night at Flumpty's 2 is such an enormous step up from the first, and that's saying a lot considering how amazing the first game really was. With the third game right around the corner, I can't wait to see what Jonachrome came up with. Oh, did I say right around the corner? Sorry, I meant 6 fucking years later. One Night at Flumpty's 3 released in 2021. Jonachrome made it clear he was never interested in making another Flumpty's game after 2, but the only reason he did is because Scott reached out to him for the Fanverse initiative. So what does 3 have to offer, and does it live up to the last 2? Flumpty's 3 is just like the last in one way. The art is phenomenal. Every single scene is fantastic and full of references. It makes the game very fun to look at. The office in this game is very frozen. You'll notice a thermometer in the corner of your screen. It's very important that you keep yourself warm and not let that meter reach empty, or you'll freeze to death like a bitch. You can go over to the furnace to have it slowly increase, and you'll need to be doing this throughout the night. How about the threats though? Returning from the last 2 games, we have Blam, who works very similarly to how he does in previous games. He'll move around the building in a set path and make it to your door, which in this game is really just a hallway. The cameras don't have power, so you should be camping them as often as you can. When Blam gets to your door is when we have to talk about a new mechanic, your camera. On the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a camera button with 20 uses. That's right, you can only use this camera 20 times throughout the night before it won't work anymore. So you better make sure you're keeping track of where every character is, because you don't want to waste any of these flashes. When Blam gets to your door, all you have to do is flash the hall and he'll run away. But be aware, there's no visual or auditory cue to signify that he's there, which is why watching the cameras is so important. Next, we've got another returning character, which by the way, there are no new characters, so I'll stop mentioning this. Anyways, the next character is Grunk Punk-Ass Slut Bitch the Clown. He does literally the exact same thing as Blam, but with one key difference. You do not want to flash him when he's in the hallway. The flash makes him scared and he'll pee his pants. That makes him embarrassed and he'll have to kill all the witnesses, and sadly for you, you're the only witness, so guess it's time to die. But being serious, while Grunkfuss is technically easier to deal with than Blam, he really makes you make sure you know where everyone is, because one false flash and it's game over. Next up on the chopping block, as I've said for the second time this video, is the Red Man. He becomes active at 1 AM and will make his way towards your furnace. On his furnace room camera, you'll see a warning telling you to stay away from your furnace. If you go to warm up by the furnace while this message is present, he'll eat your ass from the back, which I know some of you dirty freaks want, but for the rest of us normal people is something we'd prefer to prevent. I actually think this is a really nice mechanic. Something to keep you away from the only safe thing you have is super interesting. Knock knock, who's there? I don't really know, I don't usually answer my door, but we're talking about the eyesore next. He becomes active at 4 AM and actually can't be seen on the cameras. So how are you supposed to defend yourself? Well, lucky for you, you can actually see him in your hallway. Unlike the other characters, however, you'll actually have to flash eyesore twice to make him go away. And because your camera has a cooldown, this can lead to a deadly combo with Grunkussy. You'll need to make absolutely sure he's not in the hall when you go to flash eyesore. What about the owl? I hear you asking. Well, a better question would be, what about the beaver? Better yet, how about both of them, because they're both here in this game merged together as one in the form of the bee-vowel. Talk about a freak of nature, am I right? Chat, if I ever end up looking like this freak, please pull the plug, I won't be mad. Anyways, the bee-vowel starts at 2 AM and will appear on camera 3 in the hot tub. He will gradually climb out of the tub and crawl into your vent. This brings up the other side of your office where you can actually see the vent. This vent functions the exact same way the other door does. When you know the bee-vowel is in the vent, all you have to do is flash him with your camera and he'll go away. But this does lead to a split path that you'll have to watch just as much as the door path, which can become stressful as the night progresses. Finally, we have to talk about Golden Flumpty, who is just as uneventful as he was in the last 2 games. When you see him on your cameras, you can't pull down the camera unless you switch to another camera he isn't on. Otherwise, he kills you. And that's all the threats. Survive until 6 AM and the final game in the Flumpty's franchise is over. In all honesty, I think this game isn't nearly as good as Flumpty's 2. I think that might be because of the fact that Jonachrome... Huh? What? What about Flumpty? I didn't talk about him? Oh, yeah, about that. Flumpty is pretty pissed that you survived as long as you should have, and is even more pissed at his friends for not being able to kill you. Being a god, Flumpty sets the time back to 12 AM, murders all of his friends, and comes to get you himself. I lied. We're not even close to being done. Let's talk about this game's second night, Flumpty Night. You'll immediately notice some new stuff, but I'll talk about them as they become important. In this night, after killing all his friends, Flumpty transcends space and time and is able to morph his body and appear in multiple places at a time. He replaces all of his friends and takes a majority of the mechanics of the night. Let's go over each Flumpty clone together. It can get a bit confusing, and this night is a clusterfuck, but I'll hold your hand and explain everything as best I can. And let me tell you, my palms are clammy. The first clone to talk about is Another Flumpty. Yes, his name is literally, quote, Another Flumpty, end quote. This guy is the exact same as Birthday Boy Blam. Fireside Flumpty replaces the Red Man. Spider Flumpty, aka fucking animated Flumpty, again, that is literally his name, replaces the B vowel. But something cool I want to mention about Spider Flumpty is that he is gorgeously animated. Like, look at his animation when he crawls through the vent. It's gorgeous. Now we need to talk about the Flumpty clones that have their own mechanic in this game. Except not really. All-Seeing Eye Flumpty acts exactly like Grunkfuck does in Flumpty's 2. On camera 6, he'll have a patience timer, and when it reaches 0, he'll appear in your office through a hole in your wall. Also, you'll notice on this night that an exposure meter literally slides in from the side of the screen during the night, and All-Seeing Eye Flumpty will increase it. You get rid of him by flashing your camera at him. This night is about to get a lot more insane, I promise. Flumpty.exe replaces what the Red Man does from Flumpty's 2. Occasionally, a program will appear on your camera, and if you don't cancel it in time, then it's time for an ass-eating buffet. Shadow Flumpty works just how Grunkinky does in Flumpty's 1. The more you lower your camera, the further and further through positions he gets in your office. Lower it too many times, and he's gonna go spelunking in your asshole. I'm talking pounding ass pickles. Door Flumpty is where the 2 extra doors on your office come into play. He'll appear on either camera 8A or camera 8B. You can stop him by turning on your laser doors to keep him out. Also, you'll notice you have door power at the top of your screen, so you know, just something else you'll need to keep track of. Are you stressed yet? We're not done yet. While on your camera, sometimes you'll notice something really cool. Flumpty will fucking move the cameras 8A and 8B around to change which door that Door Flumpty attacks from. The first time I saw this while playing, I was freaking out. It's honestly such a cool idea that I've never seen done before. Finally, we have to talk about Virtual Boy Flumpty. Once 3 AM hits, if you look at your camera, you'll see a new section of the map that was never there before, slowly lower from the top of the screen and add 2 new cameras to the game for you to keep track of. I want you to keep in mind, all the other bullshit I've already mentioned is still happening right now. Virtual Boy Flumpty will make his way to camera 10, which you'll see has a door power switch. If you let Virtual Boy Flumpty get into this room, he will flip the switch, permanently turning off the laser doors you use to keep Door Flumpty out. So how do you stop Virtual Boy Flumpty? Well, this is really awesome. You have to close another set of doors on the fucking cameras. I swear to God I'm smoking crack because this is insane. There is actually so much shit going on this night. It's so much fun to play once you get into a groove. This is something that Jonachrome does that not many other FNAF creators can replicate. Although all of this is happening at the same time, you will almost never feel like completing it is based on luck. Everything flows together so smoothly, it's just super fun to play. Midway through 4 AM, a new song will start playing and the true boss fight begins. This final stretch is so much fun. When the song starts playing, you'll notice every single bit of your UI start to change to completely random intervals constantly. However, all of the systems still work. Sure, you can't visually see where your thermometer is at, but it's still decreasing and you will still have to manage it. Flumpty sings a little song, and if you manage to get to 6 AM, the game truly ends. We get one last final cutscene where Flumpty finally lets us leave, and we see what the world has become while we've been trapped with him. Nothing but a wasteland, and we begin to question if escaping was even worth it at all. And the One Night at Flumpty's universe comes to a close. One Night at Flumpty's was one of the earliest FNAF fan games made, and I personally think it still holds up as one of the best in the world. Each game got better than the last, which is something that sadly doesn't happen with most series. I'm very glad that Jonachrome had such good attention to detail to make sure that the games never got stale. As much as I'd love to see more games from the Flumpty's franchise, I think it's best that 3 remains the final game, and I think Jonachrome thinks that way too. Flumpty's 3 finally showed us the extent of Flumpty's power with an amazing boss battle at the end, and he even honored his word by letting you leave once you beat him. This is such an incredible ending to such an incredible game, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I think One Night at Flumpty's is as close to perfection as a FNAF game can be, and it truly shows. But of course, with the good comes the bad, and it's time to talk about Jonachrome himself and the accusations that were thrown at him. 8 days after the release of One Night at Flumpty's 3, a user on Twitter posted a twit longer stating the following. Hello, my name is unimportant in this matter and I'd rather stay anonymous. I love this community. I absolutely have been a part of the FNAF fandom ever since 2014. The point of this is to try to make it safer for everyone and minors. Don't go attacking Scott over this. He had absolutely no way of knowing who Dxtr really is. I also strongly insist that minors stay within their age groups when meeting friends in the same fandom online, whether artists or not. With that said, this is my testimony coming clean about Dxtr. After seeing the release of One Night at Flumpty's 3 and how Dxtr has insisted on staying within the community and fanverse, I cannot stand by and allow him to continue being within this fandom. And I really should have come forward much earlier when I initially found out. I was involved with plenty of his group DMs from 2016 to 2018. A girl by the name of Emily was 13 to 14 at the time, and he came all out about his relationship with her. Within group DMs we've had, Dxtr was already in his 20s. Charges cannot be pressed as Emily would need to do it herself as she would now be 19. I have evidence to prove this with links to all of it, and witness statement, and messages from Dxtr himself. This man should not be praised at all, and I hope this helps people see him for what he really is, and why he should be removed altogether from any community he has a high stance in. It can be gathered that Dxtr stated he was dating this girl, but was not going to do anything sexual until she was of legal age, which some would constitute as grooming. In my personal opinion, none of that is as damning as John's own messages. In one message, he flat out admits his plan to marry Emily, who, keep in mind, is a child. Dxtr also mentioned how they'd been dating for 2.5 years, and considering how she had her date of birth set at 2002, this would have made her about 14 years old when they started dating. It's also very clear that Dxtr knew that what he was doing was wrong, as in 2017 he was very concerned about the net neutrality laws, which he thought would cause conflict with his being able to communicate with her. The twit longer wasn't up for long when Dxtr responded. The title of his response stated that both he and Emily knew that this would happen at one time or another. His response reads, well, if my statement means anything, here it goes. I'm not a child groomer and I'm not a pedophile. Plain and simple. I wouldn't dream of manipulating or abusing or exploiting anyone, much less minors. And the twit longer has no evidence to suggest that I did. It comes across as spiteful to me more than it comes across as a post made out of legitimate concern for anyone's safety. That said, I can't deny that the screenshots are real. When Emily and I met, dating wasn't even a consideration for obvious reason. We were friends who got along really well. My first relationship was with someone my age, which only lasted a few months because we didn't communicate very well. That was when I started questioning what was really important in a relationship and what actually makes two people compatible. I realized that Emily and I share the same religious beliefs, we have similar sense of humor, there's a lot of overlap in our interests and hobbies, and we could both comfortably talk about a lot of things. We both felt like maybe we were meant to be together and were just born at the wrong times. We started talking, making it clear right away that there would be nothing sexual about our conversations and that we wouldn't meet in person until she was at least 18. We enjoyed each other's company, just talking and hanging out. Occasionally we'd watch movies together. For a long time, I didn't see the harm in it. I always put her needs before my own, always claiming to do what was best for her, and in a way, I thought I was saving her from experiencing the same heartbreak I did. This year, 2021, would have been the year we met in person, with her age at 19. But this was also when I learned she was starting to have doubts about our relationship. She knew I didn't mean any harm, while also saying I had effectively prevented her from exploring other romantic options by approaching her when I did. I'd like to say I knew better, but until that moment, I kinda didn't. I'd thought I'd done everything right, and I gambled on the assumption that if we were meant to be together, it wouldn't have mattered in several more years. But the reality is, I didn't give her enough time to grow, and I shouldn't have even entertained the idea. It's a mistake I've made the one time, and I'll never make it again for as long as I live. For anyone who wishes to hear the victim side of the story, Emily and I are on good terms, and she's planning on making her own response to this as soon as she can. Regardless, I was wrong for pursuing a relationship with her. I can't change the past, but I hope that my story can at least serve as an example for others. Please, whether you're an adult or a minor, don't make the same mistake I did. You might have the best intentions and the utmost confidence in a potential relationship with someone out of your age range, and you might not see any red flags, but that's no excuse. It's not worth it. Minors should be especially careful in an online space because there are people out there who want to take advantage of it. This could have ended a lot worse. Stay safe. Later after that, Emily responded herself, and her response reads, Dxtr is not guiltless in this. As I'm an adult now, I'm completely aware of that. but he is genuinely a kind-hearted person who just did something to himself that he shouldn't have. As a minor at the time, of course I was super dumb and naive, but as an adult, Jonachrome was 100% responsible for his actions. He has apologized to me several times, and I truly still believe he's a good person. We even talk on good terms even though we're separate, but he has recognized that he fucked up. So please, as the victim, leave the man alone. Let me clarify. He has never tried to solicit anything from me. He has never asked me to do anything I didn't want to. It was not good to consider us having a romantic relationship when I was very explicitly not old enough. But keep in mind, we've always been friends. Jonachrome is easygoing, fun to talk to. We used to watch movies together and talk about what we liked about them. We used to draw cute pictures for each other. We used to talk about the games we'd like. Morally, it was wrong to have romance between us, but it was innocent too. To say that it was grooming is where it becomes gray, because I feel like it was definitely unintentional somehow. That sounds like I'm confused, but I know why that is. If he had malice intent, he would have been much more persistent than he was. But no, he's not dangerous whatsoever. If Jonachrome attempts something like this again, yeah, I don't think I could trust him. He has done something awful, but that doesn't mean he himself is awful. What matters is how he moves on. If he's learned from this to know not to go any further from what he did to me. I was the one who confronted him about how a relationship would cause too many problems as an adult, and that's why I broke ties. Over those 6 years, I can say confidently that I care about the man's well-being. I don't want him to suffer. Let me say this again. Legally, he has not committed any crime. He's shown no clear intent to harm me, nor has he sent any harmful content to a minor. He is innocent in that respect, but that doesn't mean I'm excusing it. I'm just saying I, the victim, am okay. I'm also aware that no sexual stuff until legal is wrong and gross, because that does constitute as grooming. But there was still genuinely a relationship between us. Not romantically, but a friendship that we had. I can confidently say Jonachrome was a good friend. Yes, there was romance. It wasn't good by any means. He and I both knew there was something wrong with it, but I tried to pretend that it wasn't there. But please do not harass him. I can tell he's doing better because he talked to me before this mess got out. As for the person who exposed Jonachrome, I do not wish to be involved in this. I do not care about this anymore. I've moved on and so has he. If I am his only victim, then don't make any more accusation. I know this situation better than anyone. To everyone, don't say, I'm sorry this happened to you, because Jonachrome is already sorry, and to me, that's enough. I don't need your sympathy. Spread my response so people know what actually happened. As an adult, I'm not pressing any charges against Jonachrome, and I truly hope he's living his best life. He's been seeking therapy, and I do hope he'll make it out alive in this. His multiple apologies to me are proof of his self-improvement. I'm hoping this is enough. I do not want to make another statement, and frankly, I'm pissed that it even came out because he's hopefully not going to do this again, and I'm not traumatized from it. If he does it again, go ahead, talk about it. Otherwise, leave us alone. Jonachrome eventually made one more statement, which is way too long for me to cover in this video, but he basically says that he didn't groom Emily, because grooming requires sexual intent, which he claims he never had while in the relationship. John had been gone for years, but has actually, as of writing this, released a video on his gaming channel 3 weeks ago. He says he's been in therapy and is looking forward to working on more projects. As far as I'm aware, we still haven't heard from Emily or the anonymous person who brought this to light, but everyone has seemed to move on and they have accepted their faults and took accountability. While what Jonachrome did was wrong, no doubt about it, I truly think he's good at heart. I and many others all hope that this was a one-time thing, and I hope that this was a very clear wake-up call to never do something like this again, and it appears that that is the case. I and many others are excited to see what Jonachrome has in store for us, even if it has nothing to do with the One Night at Flumpty's series. One Night at Flumpty's is truly an amazing game, made by someone with a regrettable past. Even if you choose to not follow Jonachrome anymore, these games are a perfect example of being able to separate the art from the artist, and recognize that Jonachrome made some terrible decisions, but at the end of the day, the work he produced is something that will likely never be able to be replicated again. But that's all I have to say about One Night at Flumpty's. Let me know what you think about these games in the comments below. In my Rainbow Friends video, I asked you all what your favorite Roblox horror game was and why. My favorite comment is this one by Ryko Janes. They go into deep detail about why they liked Pressure, and I don't have the time to read the whole comment, but I recommend you do. Depravity. Something that plagues several corners of the internet. Whether you like to think about it or not, disgusting people lurk everywhere. They're in every community, interacting with countless people, and in the worst cases, interacting with minors. They corrupt even the most wholesome of communities and snake their way into people's trust. But even the slimiest of snakes get the light shined on their dark desires eventually. And while it may hurt people knowing that someone they looked up to or someone who created something they really enjoyed were one of these snakes, it's always important to remember, though, that a bad apple doesn't always spoil the whole orchard. Today, we'll be talking about an incredibly infamous game in the Five Nights at Freddy's community. I'm not the first, nor will I be the last to speak about it, but I and many other sensible people are capable of separating the art from the artist and are plenty capable of commenting and criticizing a piece of media without attaching its creator to it, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. Towards the end of this video, I will also be talking about the creator of this game to give you a better understanding of what he was like before he seemingly left the internet. If things are about to get uncomfortable or depraved, I will give ample warning before we talk about said subjects, but in general, viewer discretion is advised. Come with me as we dive into the sick and depraved world of Dormitibus. But before we talk about the disgusting story of this game that would make most normal people want to throw up, we first have to talk about the actual gameplay, which I'll tell you is definitely something. I'll let you be the judge of whether or not it's actually good. There's no better place to start than Night 1, which I will mention, Dormitibus takes a different approach to nights than most FNAF games. Generally speaking, FNAF games have 5 nights, corresponding to 1 work week on the job, with a typical 6th day of overtime and 7th optional night to round out the week. Since in Dormitibus we play as a character who isn't actually working anywhere, Dormitibus is not tied to a typical week, instead having 10 nights rather than the typical 6. So let's dive right into Night 1. Let's start by talking about this goofy-ass office. You can travel from one side of the office to the other. One side of the office lets you look at your cameras, and the other side of the office has literally fucking nothing. But I'll go over why the useless side of the office is technically not useless in a moment. Another question you may have is, why the hell do we run under the table to get to the other side of the room when there's plenty of space on both sides of the table to walk around? Now you see, the answer to that question is fuck you. But now let's actually talk about some animatronics. As usual, I will explain each animatronic as they're introduced into the game, and on Night 1, we only have one animatronic to deal with, that being Havoc Freddy. Try your best not to focus on these goofy-ass designs. They have their own charm, in a way. Havoc Freddy is one of the most simple characters in all of Dormitibus. Freddy will move throughout the cameras, slowly inching towards your office. He arrives at your left door, and when he does, you can turn to your left to double-check that he's there. You'll be able to see him peering in at you. When he's there, you'll need to run to the other side of the room. At that point, he will almost immediately go away. I have no idea why this scares him away. I guess he's brain dead, but I'm not going to complain about an easy mechanic. Fun fact, you can actually make this mechanic even easier by never even checking if Freddy is at your door. Freddy makes a very noticeable sound cue when he arrives at your door, that being the sound of a door creaking directly in your left ear. I wonder if the other animatronics will be any harder. As mentioned, Havoc Freddy is the only enemy in Night 1, so beating it should be a cakewalk. What does Night 2 have in store? Well, Night 2 doesn't have Havoc Freddy present, and this is where I want to bring up something about this game that I actually think is pretty cool. In most FNAF games, as the nights go on, more and more animatronics will be added, and on top of that, they will become more and more aggressive. Dormitibus takes a different approach. Because of how many characters there are, it would not be possible to deal with all of them at once if their AI levels were super high. So instead, the game experiments with animatronic combinations, pairing a few animatronics together, rather than throwing all of them at you at the same time, which I think is actually pretty cool. But for animatronics in Night 2, we have Havoc Chica and Am I Real, also known as Cake Bear. Let's start with Havoc Chica, as her mechanic is the easiest to deal with of the two. Havoc Chica is pretty much just a slightly more annoying version of Havoc Freddy, with one deep, cutting, wounding flaw that I'll get to later. Chica will move around the building and make her way to your right door. Once Chica gets to your door, you can turn to check if she's there, but like Freddy, she also makes a very obvious sound cue, that being laughing in your right ear. When Chica is at the door, all you need to do is run to the useless side of the room and stare at Chica. Once she leaves, you will have to very quickly run back to the camera side of the room, If you don't move back fast enough, Havoc Cupcake will have a feast with your yeast. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. Oh my god. Now it's time to talk about Am I Real? Am I Real moves around the cameras at random. Whenever he enters a new camera, he will audibly state which camera he moved to. Once you hear him say a camera, you will have to switch to that camera and check which form he's in. Am I Real has two possible forms, one form being Am I Real, a gross Springtrap looking design, and the other form being Cake Bear, a much more normal Freddy looking design. If you check the camera and see Cake Bear, you're free to continue playing the game as usual, no call for alarm. However, if you check the camera and you see Am I Real, you will have to stay and stare at that camera for what can feel like at times an entire minute, until Am I Real turns back into Cake Bear. Now, this may sound scary, especially when you think about the fact that in order to run to the other side of the room to avoid Havoc Chica and Freddy, you have to turn the cameras off. But the game knew this would be a problem, so when you shut the cameras off to move to the other side of the room, it will still count as you staring at that camera, meaning that Am I Real will still turn back to Cake Bear even if you're on the other side of the room, as long as the last camera you were looking at was Am I Real's. If you don't watch Am I Real, he will appear at your right door, and once he's there, there's nothing you can do to stop him from giving you a rough spanking that a lot of you freaks will really like. If you can manage all of that, then congratulations! You're ready to move on to Night 3. Night 3 uses Havoc Freddy, Am I Real, and two new characters, Soul Cage and Molten Evil. I'll cover Molten Evil first. Molten Evil will only ever appear in your office. When you see him, he will start to cover your screen with blue plasma. Once this plasma is on your screen, you will have to play dead by looking up at the ceiling. Don't ask. I know it doesn't make any sense, but just pretend like it does for me. After looking at the ceiling for long enough, the plasma will go away and you'll be safe to look down again. If you look up before the plasma is on your screen, Molten Evil will wait until you look back down before putting the plasma on your screen. So looking up early really only just stalls him. Soul Cage is somewhat similar in a way. Soul Cage will move around the cameras and slowly piece itself together. Once it's put together fully, it will make its way to your right door. Once he arrives, he too will play a sound cue to let you know he's there. When he does, you'll have to look over at him. Afterwards, he'll enter your office and move up onto your ceiling. In order to get him to leave, all you have to do is stare up at the ceiling at him until he goes away. If you haven't noticed yet, every single character can be dealt with by staring at them. And if you're hoping that the other characters will be different, most of them will cause you to be sorely disappointed. Hate to break it to you. Wait, who am I kidding? I love breaking bad news. Night 4 only introduces one new character, but the returning characters are Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, and Am I Real. The new character is Havoc Puppet. Havoc Puppet moves around the cameras and makes its way to your back window, which is located right behind your computer. Once Havoc Puppet appears in your window, it will make a very noticeable sound cue. At that point, all you have to do is turn around to your window and stare at it until it goes away. Are you starting to notice a possible game mechanic flaw with Dormitibus? Literally every character is answered by looking at them, and that's literally it. Hopefully, we get a new character soon that's at least a little different. Holy fucking shit, this new character is bullshit. Okay, let's take a step back and relax for a second. Every character up until this point has been Baby Caca Easy Mode. Night 5 consists of Soul Cage, Havoc Puppet, Am I Real, and the two brand new Wombo combo, Havoc Foxy and Golden Call. Havoc Foxy and Golden Call are pretty much one and the same, as one of them really can't work without the other. Havoc Foxy is on camera 5, something I thought was weird because the phone guy on this night says that he's on camera 4, which is just flat out wrong, but let's move past that. Havoc Foxy has 3 phases on his camera, which the final has Foxy standing out of his curtains. You can slow down Foxy by watching his camera, and this will become very important because you want to avoid his 3rd phase as much as you can. However, this can prove difficult because of one character I'm sure you've already thought about, Am I Real? With Am I Real hogging most of your camera time, Foxy is free to buttfuck you as much as he wants. Once Foxy reaches phase 3, Golden Call comes into play. After reaching phase 3, Golden Call will send a voicemail to your computer with a Trojan virus attached. In order to remove the Trojan, you'll have to type in a password. How do you get the password? Well, this is when phase 3 Foxy becomes important. While in phase 3, Foxy will be holding a sign with the randomly generated phrase on it. You'll have to read the phrase on the sign and find the longest word. The longest word will be the password you need to get rid of the Trojan. Once you remove the Trojan, you will have to very quickly run to the other side of the office and watch the right side door as Foxy will soon be approaching. Once Foxy peers in, all you have to do is stare at him until he goes away. Afterwards, you'll be free to go back to your cameras and resume business as usual. Congrats! You've successfully survived a golden call attack. Are you stressed? Well, you should be, because you're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Again, the real problem with Havoc Foxy and Golden Call isn't really their mechanics. That's fine. The problem really comes down to Am I Real? Again, Am I Real constantly requires your attention as he moves around the cameras often. Just by himself, he'll take away from your time stalling Foxy, and once you get a Trojan, you'll have to stop looking at Am I Real to find the password. But not watching Am I Real will get you killed really easily. Generally speaking, from my experience, you want to drop everything for Golden Call, get the password in as fast as you can, quickly switch back to Am I Real's camera before running to the other side of the room to watch Foxy. I feel like this will give you the most success. Night 6 includes Havoc Foxy, Havoc Chica, Molten Evil, and Am I Real. While that alone may sound like a very unfun time, just wait until I introduce the next most frustrating character on the planet, the BOA, or as I like to call it, Boa, aka Boa Bitch Boy. Boa starts in a box on the cameras and slowly emerges from it, afterwards making its way to your right door. Once there, it will give you a sound cue. When you hear it, you will need to quickly move to the other side of the room. Something pretty interesting about Boa is that he actually speaks to you. If you're running to the other side of the room, Boa says this. Once you get to the other side of the office, just like most characters, all you have to do is look at it. You might be wondering why this character is so frustrating if he acts exactly the same as Havoc Chica. Well, the answer to that question is simple. Boa Bitch Boy sits at your door for approximately 17 years, and that number came from countless hours of crunching the numbers, analyzing algorithms. I promise it's very accurate. That's seriously why Boa is such a difficult character to deal with. Mixed with all the other characters that require so much of your attention, having a character that requires double or maybe even triple the amount of time can feel like a purgatory. But if you can handle that, you'll be on to Night 7. Night 7 contains Soul Cage, Molten Evil, and the deadly Wombo combo of Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, and Am I Real. No new characters on this night, but I'm sure it's just so that players have some time to find some strategies that can fend off the Butthole Trilogy gang. Night 8 is where this game cranks the dial up to 1,000. While it introduces no new characters, the combo of characters present is enough to make any grown man cry. I know I did. Night 8 consists of Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, Am I Real, and the icing on the cake, the Boa. This lineup of characters is actually so disgusting, I find it difficult to use vocabulary fitting enough to describe my disgust. I could dish out 100 vulgarities, and it still wouldn't be enough to portray the feeling of dread you get while trying to beat this night. The Wombo combo mixed with the Boa is already bad enough, but throw Freddy and Chica into the mix and you're itching for somebody to commit quintuple homicide on everybody in their domicile. This is probably the most infamous night in this entire game. There's a one-on-one boss fight on a later night, but that doesn't even compare to this bullshit. You want to know the main issue? The main issue is that this night is entirely dependent on luck. That's the worst part. Most people who play FNAF will tell you that luck is the most unenjoyable part of any FNAF game because it doesn't matter how much you practice. Your chances of winning is entirely dependent on whether or not the game decides to fuck you in the asshole. And for some unfortunate people who played this game soon after it released, had to deal with an absolutely foul bug. Remember when I said that Chica had a terrible flaw? This is the time where I get to explain that flaw to you, the viewer. Chica used to have an incredibly glaring bug, that being, you would hear Chica laugh, signaling for you to move to the other side of the office to stare at her. So you do, but as you turn to look at her, she won't be there. Moments later, Nightmare Cupcake would kill you, almost like you ignored Chica altogether, but you know you didn't, and she just didn't appear. This would happen incredibly frequently. Fun fact, it was actually this exact bug that made Dawko give up on this night and skip it. I can only imagine how incredibly frustrating it must have been for players to pour so much time into this night, get to 6 AM, only to then die because Chica decided she didn't want to work. Absolutely foul. I never had to deal with this bug, so it appears to not be a problem anymore, but let me know in the comments if you've experienced the problems with this Havoc Chica bug. If you can somehow manage to keep your sanity intact through Night 8, then you can finally move on to Night 9. And let me tell you, it will feel incredibly underwhelming because Night 8 is so much harder. Night 9 consists of Soul Cage, Havoc Puppet, Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, Molten Evil, and Am I Real? Can you figure out why this night is easier than the previous? Yeah, you're exactly right. It's because the boa isn't there to slam your dick in a car door. I don't have much to say about this night, honestly. The voice acting of the phone call is pretty questionable, but I'll talk more about the phone calls in a while. Night 10, however, I do have something to talk about. Remember how I said one of the nights in this game is a one-on-one boss fight? Yeah, this is that night. You go up against a character you haven't seen before named Garvey. Now, since Garvey is the only animatronic on this night, you may think it's going to be easy. And while I'd say it's still easier than Night 8, it's definitely not easy by any means, so get that thought out of your head right now, bucko. So I'm going to warn you ahead of time that Garvey's mechanics are not technically difficult, but you'll understand why he's such a pain in the ass as this explanation goes on. Let's get one huge problem out of the way. You're only allowed to be looking at the cameras for a specific amount of time throughout the night. The more you look at the cameras, the darker your vision gets. It's definitely slow, but once it starts to get dark, you'll totally be able to tell. Garvey can attack from 3 different locations. Think of these locations as the left, the middle, and the right. Left and right are the most straightforward. You will have to listen for Garvey's laughter. This will give you a pretty clear indication of which side he's about to attack you from. At this point, you must open up the cameras. This is the part where I should mention that there's been a vent toggle button on the cameras this whole time. I never brought it up because it hasn't ever been important up until this point. After you pull up the camera and toggle the vents, you must click on the vent of the side Garvey is coming from. This will temporarily slow him down. At this time, you must very quickly run to the other side of the office and stare at the door he'll be coming from. Beating him to the door is key. You have to be staring at the door before Garvey peeks in, which can be challenging because you need to be fast. Like, really fucking fast. It will not feel remotely fair, but as you start to learn his speed, it will get slightly easier. Which, like, no fucking shit, that's how practice works. Insane that I have to explain to you how practicing works, and yet, here we are. Now, there will come a few times where you will hear his laughter in both of your ears. At this time, all you have to do is look straight up at the ceiling. You'll be able to see him staring back at you. Keep staring until he disappears, and you'll be good to continue. Honestly, the best part of this night is that you don't have to deal with Golden Call. God fucking damn, I hate that stupid ass animatronic bitch. But if you can manage to hunker down and deal with all of the garbage for long enough, you'll be able to beat Night 10. But what happens then? Well, a cutscene plays. At our desk, we will be able to see a heart on the table for some reason. As we're confused, wondering why it's there, Garvey shatters the window behind us and begins chasing us through the building. We get trapped near a door and enter one final spacebar mashing minigame. The screen cuts to black and we're shown a gravestone of a John Wright, stating brat, scum, waste of air. So, that might seem confusing to you, so I suppose it's time I explain a bit about the lore, huh? Bear with me, as this is not one of my strong suits. So that John Wright on the tombstone is us. We've been playing as John Wright, as is mentioned in the Night 1 phone call. A man by the name of Peter is the phone guy, and he's the one calling us throughout the nights. He claims he used to be a security guard at Freddy Fazbear's. On Night 1, Peter explains that we're dead and in a sort of purgatory, with several monsters roaming the buildings. And these monsters are supposedly our childhood friends. The reason why we're in a Freddy Fazbear's-like location is because our mind shapes the purgatory based off of the things we've seen, which could suggest we either worked at a Fazbear's location before, or at least have a strong tie to one. Peter says we can escape this purgatory, but he needs our help. He says to grab an audio tape that should be on the desk next to the fan. This is also where we learn that there is a tape that we need to collect on each night. All tapes, aside from the first, will appear randomly on one of the cameras, and I'll get into these tapes later. On Night 2, Peter explains his theories about why we're being hunted by the animatronics. He believes that someone or something tried to manifest these ghosts into physical bodies. That attempt clearly failed, which is why all of the characters look so fucked. Peter believes that because we are ghosts, we have a plasma of sorts that the animatronics need to survive, and that's why they're trying to eat us up like a gourmet steak. We don't get the next meaningful piece of information from Peter until Night 5, where he tells us that Golden Call is his own physical remains. That means we've identified one of the animatronics trying to attack us and we'll soon be able to find out who everyone else is as well, but we can cover that later. Peter tells us that the tapes we've been collecting are memories from our traumatic childhood. Peter mentions how an ominous key is also on these tapes, and I'm willing to bet that this key is Garvey. Peter thinks that collecting all of these tapes will allow our friends to move on and become regular ghosts, not being trapped in this purgatory with us anymore. On night 6, Peter explains to us that he has tapes too in his version of the purgatory, and that both his memories and ours are in one way or another tied to Freddy's locations. He says he missed a few of his tapes because you only get one attempt. The first 10 days in the purgatory decide your fate. Missing one tape is the difference between a chance at escape and spending eternity fending off your suffering dead friends stuck inside of robotic bodies. Peter begs us to collect the tapes and free everyone because he can't anymore. On night 7, Peter says the animatronic sleep cycles are all out of whack. He's been doing this for years while stuck here and was able to find a pattern with their sleep cycles. But out of nowhere, once we came here, those cycles started to change for some reason. Peter mentions he found a key and tried to use it on the exit door, but it didn't work. He says he'll update us as soon as he can. On night 8, we get some pretty crucial information. Peter has found another key, and he believes something may happen soon. He says we probably don't have any keys in our purgatory because he thinks the keys are linked to a specific trauma he suffered. He also thinks he knows why the animatronic sleep cycles are messed up. Apparently, we brought something into this world, and it's big, with loud footsteps causing the characters to wake up when they're not supposed to. Peter says that if this thing we brought in is what he thinks it is, that we're all sorts of fucked. And of course, knowing what we already know, we can take a pretty good guess at who that might be. Night 9 is where we get to hear Peter's final moments. The monster we let enter this world is exactly who Peter thought it was: Garvey. Garvey has been tearing all of the monsters in Peter's purgatory into pieces. Peter knows that we apparently know who Garvey is. He tells us he's hiding behind the curtains where Foxy is, and that Garvey is coming for him. He tells us to get the keys, and the call ends. The 2 keys he's mentioned can be found. The first on night 10 in the same location where you find the tape on camera 5. The second key requires me to tell you about a night I have yet to mention, night 11, aka Nightmare. No matter how good you are at FNAF games, nothing will prepare you for just how surprisingly difficult this night really is. They cranked the AI for these characters on this night up to 10,000. Holy shit, it's insane. From 10 a.m. to 5 a.m., you go up against Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Havoc Puppet, Golden Call, The Boa, Soul Cage, and Molten Evil all at the same time. This has to be one of the most stressful challenges I've ever attempted. It is ridiculous. The sheer speed you have to even get close to beating this night is ridiculous. You quite literally have no time to rest for even a second. There is constantly something happening, and it's enough to give any grown adult a seizure and kill them instantly. But that's not even the worst part, no. The worst part comes at 5 a.m., when Garvey comes and kills everyone, and you're yet again thrown into a final, even more difficult Garvey boss fight for the last 2 hours of the night. If you thought he was quick before, boy, you better be Usain Bolt, because you need to be double in your speed. It is insane how fast you really have to be if you want to be able to complete this night. But if you can manage to beat this night while grabbing the second key that's on camera 8, congrats! You're almost ready to achieve the good ending. There are a few prerequisites required to get the good ending. The first is getting the 2 keys. Check. The second is collecting all of the tapes. Check. The third is beating night 11. Check. The fourth is listening to the 10th tape. Come to think of it, we actually haven't dove into the tapes yet, so we'll do that now. But here's that warning I mentioned at the beginning of the video. The topics that take place in these tapes are highly disturbing and are one of the main reasons why this game is so controversial. Viewer discretion is heavily advised. The 10 tapes you collect throughout Dormitibus tell the story of Garvey Wright, John Wright's, our character's, brother. The tapes go over Garvey's plan to murder several children and stuff them into the suits in his father's establishment. There's another minigame you can play in Dormitibus called Cardboard Theater, where you play as Garvey and live out a few of the scenarios mentioned in these tapes. Not only did Garvey murder several children, he also murdered his brother Peter. Yes, the same Peter who was calling us throughout the game. In the cardboard theater, we get to watch the springlock failure happen to Garvey before he has the chance to kill John and leave no witnesses. Garvey's father soon sells the Cake Bear establishments because of the controversy, and it gets bought and turned into what we now know as Freddy Fazbear's. John gets a job at the Fazbear Fright location from Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and goes head-to-head with his brother, who in this game's story basically took William Afton's place as Springtrap. And as you know if you've played FNAF 3, John burns the building down and kills himself as well. After his death is where Dormitibus takes place. By collecting the tapes, collecting the keys, and beating Cardboard Theater, John is able to send Garvey to hell while setting the rest of the spirits of his dead friends and brother free. Dexter, that sounds pretty normal for a FNAF-style game, I hear you saying. Why did you tell me that viewer discretion was advised? Well, that's because of the contents of Tape 3, and a specific news clipping that you see near the end of the game. In Cardboard Theater, you will need to recollect the 2 keys you collected before while playing. At the end of this minigame, Cake Bears will be unlocked, acting as the final 12th night of Dormitibus. The only 2 characters present in this night are Cake Bear and Havoc Puppet. I won't spend too much time explaining this night since you only ever have to beat it once. Cake Bear will move around the map and make it to your desk. You can stall him by lighting the candle on his cake, but I'm not sure if I'd actually do that because it drains power. Once he gets super close to your desk, quickly pull up the camera and he should go away. Havoc Puppet can appear randomly on any camera and will block your view. Since watching Cake Bear is essential, you'll want to get rid of the puppet. Simply staring at the puppet will cause it to go away, but sitting in the cameras will cause the battery to drain incredibly quickly, so it's best to wait until the battery is fully charged before dealing with him. If the battery goes dead, Havoc Puppet will disable it, which will lead to an inevitable death to Cake Bear. After beating Night 12, you'll be greeted to the FNAF 4 box. You must use the 2 keys you've collected to open it, and several news clippings will be given to you, each detailing the gruesome murders of some of the children at the hands of Garvey. But I'll cover them in just a moment. Back to the tapes. I referenced Tape 3 being the most alarming of all of them. Rather than explain it to you, I'll just play it.
My God! This is most certainly beginning to be fun. There's this hot 15-year-old that was part of the kids' friends group. You know, it was fun. She screamed, but nobody heard her. It was so much fun. She's in one of the suits now. Just a little more time until Fredbear's is going down as well. But hey, I'll find my ways to catch her at the others.
You may have a good idea as to what Garvey is referencing doing in this tape, but if you need any clarification, one of the news clippings will confirm your suspicions. It reads, "The Fredbear's establishment in town was recently closed because of an accident with the animatronical characters. The CEO is now selling the franchise just like the previous owner did. The dirt that has been shed onto the establishment increased even more, as the police found the remains of a 15-year-old female in the back of the establishment, stuffed into a suit. She was supposedly raped to death by a yet unknown killer. Connections to the incident at the previous establishment are already being drawn." This clipping right here, mixed with the excitement in the voice of Garvey in Tape 3, is the sole reason why this game is so hated and is so disgusting. Almost everybody agrees that throwing rape into this story was completely unnecessary. Some may argue that depraved people will do depraved things like this, and it's odd to not acknowledge that terrible things like this really happen. And to a point, I understand your thought process. But to feel the need to add it to a game that will most definitely be played by children with no prior warning is insane. And it gets even worse when you dive into the person who made the decision to put this into the story, Blackout. Blackout has since left the internet, but a while after Dormitibus released, one of the members of the Radiance team responsible for games such as Treasure Island and Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted posted an unlisted YouTube video going over Blackout's messages of harassment towards them. Soon after that video followed a Google document surfacing regarding Blackout's behavior, regarding joking about raping people, being hateful towards trans people, and a laundry list of other terrible things. But the most egregious thing that Blackout has done was the Discord messages that were released revealing him to have been grooming a 12-year-old girl, making jokes about Germany's lax age of consent laws, and at one point even sending nudes to this child, this 12-year-old girl. After all of this unfolded, Blackout went on a hate brigade full of harassment and eventually left the internet, thanking his supporters that he for some reason thought he had. Now going to his Game Jolt page reads one message. Jesus Christ, just leave me be. I don't want to live in your heads rent-free. I've moved on, and you should as well. Bye. And with that, that's where the story of Dormitibus ends. A game that could have been something amazing, with a story that was really promising, soiled and ruined by a disgusting, perverted pedophile. Again, I encourage everyone to try their best to separate the art from the artist, but if you can't do that, then I'd recommend checking out the remake of Dormitibus that was made by some very talented creators if you're still interested in seeing what this game has to offer, minus all of the disgusting and unnecessary perversions. But let me know what you think. Taking out the disturbing lore and separating Blackout from it, what do you think about the gameplay of Dormitibus? Do you really like it, or do you feel like it's pretty lazy? I'm interested to hear what you all have to say. I've been Dexter, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!